Guys, welcome back. Today I'll be breaking down the UFC Vegas 31 fight card between Islam Makhachev and Thiago Moisés. In this video I'll break down each fight and the bets will be posted at the end of the video. My Twitter, Venmo, Cash App is in the description. Let's get right into it. Alright, the first fight of the night, we got Alan Badeau versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Alan's 8-2, Rodrigo's 8-1. Rodrigo's a pretty big heavyweight. He's kind of slow on the feet. He's got pretty big, heavy leg kicks. And then throughout his UFC fights, he's improved his boxing. He's got pretty good hands now. He's improved his speed, and he's got a lot of power. He's got a decent reach. But in this fight, he's going to have a slight disadvantage on the feet. I think Alan's a little bit better on the feet. But where the line is in big favor of Rodrigo is because he's a very good jiu-jitsu. He has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the division, and I'm kind of skeptical about Rodrigo because he's never been to the third round, so we don't know how his gas tank is, and he's got a 100% finish rate. I mean, same can be said for Alan. He's got a 100% finish rate. He's fought most of his fights at 205, but he's got fast hands, good kicks. But one of his biggest downsides is he's got very low fight IQ, and he throws a lot of wild attacks. He's pretty good in the clinch, but he's very bad off his back as well. So I'm leading Rodrigo Nascimento by submission, I think, within the first 2 rounds. And I don't really see how Alan can win this other than a lucky KO, but this fight should end in a finish, and I got Rodrigo. Alright, our next fight, we got Francisco Figueiredo versus Malcolm Gordon. Francisco Figueiredo's the younger brother of Davison Figueiredo, and he's 12-3-1, while Malcolm Gordon's 12-5. In the UFC, Francisco Figueiredo won a decision over Jerome Rivera, and that's not saying much. He should have dominated that fight, as he was a pretty sizable favorite, and Jerome hasn't won a fight in the UFC, but he earned that W, and he's a pretty big name because of his brother. However, on the other hand, Malcolm Gordon, he had 2 fights in the UFC, and he lost both of them by first-round finish, one being by triangle choke in the first round, and then the second fight being by KO in the first round. The first fight he lost to Amir Albazi, and the second fight he lost to Sub Majiri. Both those dudes are pretty tough, so it's not saying much, but Malcolm Gordon, he's got one of the worst chins in the UFC, and he had some success out of the UFC, but in the 2 UFC fights that he's had, he got destroyed, and I don't see how you could back up Malcolm Gordon other than he's got decent submissions and good sweeps on the ground with his jiu-jitsu, and he could find a lucky submission, but Figgy's got a really good left cross, and he's going to look to wrestle him, and he's got good power and decent movement. He's a little slower than his brother, but I think Figgy can either win a decision or KO, and I don't see how Gordon is going to win a decision, but the only way Gordon can win is by submission, so I'm going to go Francisco Figueiredo by KO in the first round. Alright, up next we got a pretty good low-level fight here between Miles Johns and Anderson Dos Santos. Miles Johns is 11-1, while Anderson Dos Santos is 21-8. Miles Johns had 4 fights in the UFC so far, if you include his Contender Series fight. He's got 2 wins by decision and 1 win by KO, and he's got 1 loss by KO, so he's 3-1 so far in the UFC, while Anderson is 1-2 so far. 1 win by submission, and his 2 losses being by decision. Miles Johns, he's got pretty good cardio. He's got a nice high guard. He's got a really good jab, and he throws with lots of power in his right hand. So he's got a nice overhand right. And in college, he was a very good wrestler. So just looking at him, he's a very good overall fighter. Compared to Anderson Dos Santos, and all he has to do really to win this is avoid Anderson's guillotine and just be smart. He's got to fight his own fight. Anderson's gonna make this a deadly war because he's a brawler and he's got heart, so he's gonna fight to the end. The only thing is Anderson is 35 turning 36, so that's a pretty old for being a bantamweight. and he's got pretty bad takedown defense. So I think Miles Johns should get the easy decision here, but you never know because Dos Santos is a brawler and he's going to make this a fight. So I think the line is pretty wide. Miles Johns is a minus 300 favorite, and it definitely shouldn't be that. But if I had to pick someone, I think Miles Johns is going to win by decision, but I'm not putting money on this fight. All right, up next we got Khalid Taha versus Sergey Morozov. Khalid Taha is 13-3, while Sergey is 16-4. Sergey is 0-1 in the UFC so far. His only loss being to Umar Nurmagomedov, who is Khabib's little brother, and he lost by second round rear naked choke. And then Khalid Taha has had 4 fights in the UFC. He's got 1 win, the 1 win being by knockout within the first 25 seconds, his 2 losses being by decision, and then he's also got a no contest. In the no contest, he won the fight, but he tested positive for a PED, and the PED is furosemide, and it's not really a steroid or anything, it just helps him urinate and get the urinary tract going, so he might have been taking that for his kidneys or liver or helping him cut weight, but it's not really going to affect his, it's not really a steroid. So as we can see with some guys in the past that take PEDs, if they're off of steroids, they lose their fights usually right away, but Khalid Taha wasn't taking steroids. It was kind of a low-level PED, but you still can't take it. So looking at these two fighters, Sergey, he's pretty light on his feet. He's a striker. He's very precise. He's got very good head movement, good body kicks, and he's very durable. In order to win this fight, he's got to wrestle Taha and get him on the ground and just control him because he's the better overall fighter here. Taha, he's a pressure fighter. He's going to throw everything with power. So he's going to wait and load up and try to get him out of there. He's got pretty good combos, and he wants this fight up close in the pocket, and he's just going to go to war. He's just going to try to throw bombs and try to kick him out of there. He just goes for the KO, and he's got pretty good kicks, but that's what gets him in trouble. He loads up, like I said before, and I feel like Sergey, if he times it right, he can get him out of there, but I see this fight going to decision, and I got Sergey. And Sergey, looking at this line, Sergey's a pretty big underdog. Right now I see him at plus 150. I'm not quite sure why he's that big of an underdog. I think this fight should actually be flipped. I think Sergey should be the favorite here, especially since Taha is coming off of PEDs and doesn't have a very good track record. So I'm going to go Sergey by decision, and he's one of my dog picks for this fight card. Up next, we got Amanda Lemos versus Montrez Ruiz. Amanda is 9-1-1. Ruiz is 10-1. Amanda Lemos has had 4 fights in the UFC so far. She is 3-1. Her 3 wins, actually 1 win being by decision, 1 being by KO, and 1 being by submission. Her 1 loss being by KO. Ruiz had 1 fight in the UFC, and she was an underdog, and she won by decision against Cheyenne Baez. Lemos is a very good overall fighter. She's kind of reminds me of Amanda Nunes fight style with the Davison Figueiredo huge size advantage. She's a huge strawweight. She's got good hand speed, good kicks, and she's pretty much better everywhere. There's a huge gap on the feet for Amanda Lemos, and the only thing that I see that's not good for Lemos is she's old. She's 34 years old, while Ruiz is 28, but Ruiz is not as good as Lemos, and the only thing Ruiz has got going for her is she's going to be willing to close the distance and go to war and trade punches in the pocket, but her problem is she's always looking for a headlock on the ground, and it's not going to work against Lemos. I just don't see how Ruiz is going to be able to walk forward and piece up Lemos at all or finish Lemos on the ground and even get a decision. So I'm going to go with Lemos, and I think her minus 500 odds are accurate. Even though that's the second highest odds on the card, I think she's definitely should be the favorite, and I think she's a very good parlay piece. So I'm going to go with Amanda Lemos by KO in the second round. Alright, up next we got Danny Rodriguez versus Preston Parsons. Danny is 14-2, Preston is 9-2. Preston is 26-year-old, and Danny is 34. Preston is taking this fight on short notice, and this is his UFC debut. Danny Rodriguez has had 5 fights in the UFC, and he's very active. He's 4-1 so far in the UFC. He's got 2 wins by decision, 1 by KO, and 1 by submission, and his 1 loss to Nick Dalby is by decision. So he's a very tough guy. He's got very good boxing. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and he throws with lots of volume. In my opinion, he's a top 15 welterweight, and I'm a big fan of his. He always brings a good show. He's got a good jab, got a good left hook, got a good right straight, and he throws hard low kicks. So the only thing is he's going to struggle with wrestlers or guys that stay at range and just out-jab him or kick his legs and just win by throwing more strikes. Preston, he's 9-2. 9 of his wins are all by submission. He's never won by decision or KO. And his 2 losses, 1 of them is by KO and 1 by submission. So this guy has never seen the judges' scorecards. He's always in a kill or be killed match. He's fought a lot of low-level opponents. Like I said, this is his UFC debut. His striking keeps getting better. He's got good straights. He's got decent combos. Got bad head movement and bad leg kicks. He's a decent wrestler and decent jiu-jitsu, and he just relies on submissions. In all honesty, this is another fight where one guy's heavily favored, and in this case again, I think Danny earned it. I think he can win by KO or submission. I just see him having way too much for Preston and eventually beating him. However, Preston is always live for a submission, so I don't know if I'd throw Danny in a parlay or anything, but I would definitely take Danny Rodriguez inside the distance, because I think if he wins, obviously it's going to be inside the distance, but if Preston wins, it's going to be by submission. So if you're not fully confident in Danny, you could do Preston by submission with a little bit of money, but I really think Danny Rodriguez will win, and I got Danny Rodriguez winning by KO in the 3rd round. Alright, up next we got the best fight of the night, in my opinion. Gabriel Benitez versus Billy Quarantillo. Gabriel is 22-9, Billy Q is 15-2. I jumped earlier on Billy Q this week at plus 140. I think he should be the favorite in this spot. I don't see how Benitez is a minus 200 favorite, and I would bet Billy Q at minus 150 favorite, but anything over minus 150 I probably would not. I would stay off this. It kind of makes me nervous seeing that the bookies have Benitez at this big of a favorite, and pretty much everyone that I've talked to has Billy Q winning this fight, but Billy Q's my dog of the week. I'm really high in this guy. He's one of my favorite fighters. He's got a pressure forward style. He likes to initiate action. He's going to have a longer reach. He's a bigger fighter. He's going to have a grappling advantage, and he likes to throw inside the pocket if it goes there. But his big thing is using his pace as a weapon. He's a cardio freak, but his thing is he's hittable. And that might not be a good thing against Benitez, because Benitez has been known to have one of the most powerful kicks in the division, and that might be an issue for Billy Q. Benitez is taking this fight on short notice, so he's going back down to featherweight at 145. He's got a good counter straight right, and he's very hittable as well. But the thing with Benitez is he struggles with pressure, so that's why I'm leaning, or I'm going to go with Billy Q here, and I think he's going to get it done by decision. And I think he should do it comfortably as well. Alright, now we got Rodolfo Viera versus Dustin Stolfus, and I love this fight from a betting perspective, because you know what you're going to get from Rodolfo Viera. Viera's 7-1 while Dustin is 13-2. Viera had 1 fight in the UFC so far, and Dustin had 2. Dustin won his first fight in the Contender Series by a slam, and then he lost to Kyle Dawkins by decision. Viera has had 1 fight in the UFC so far, and it was to Fluffy Hernandez, and going into that fight, he was a minus 500 favorite and ended up losing. But that first round, Viera, he got Fluffy down early, and he looked like he was going to get that submission, but Fluffy ended up surviving, and he really poured it on Viera. He was punching him in the head, and Viera he's a tank. He is super strong, and he can really take a punch. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because it looks like he has no striking defense, but he can really take a punch. And his nickname is the Black Belt Hunter, and I really think that he could probably beat Gilbert Burns and Damian Maia in a jiu-jitsu match. So this dude is not to be messed with on the ground. But Viera's biggest thing is his cardio. In his last fight against Fluffy, the reason why he lost is because he gassed out. He kept going for that submission and ended up losing. Dustin, he's a more well-rounded fighter, but he's not really a master of anything. So everyone's picking Dustin here because they compare him to Fluffy and they think he's going to do the same thing as Fluffy did to Viera. But I think Dustin is not that good, and I think Viera is going to get that first-round submission here. However, if Viera does not get Dustin within the first round and a half, I would live bet Dustin for sure, because Viera is going to gas out, and Dustin can end up finishing him. But my prediction is Rodolfo Viera by first-round submission. We got Jeremy, who the fuck is that guy, versus Mateusz Gamrot. Jeremy is 28-18, while Gamrot's 18-1. Gamrot's a hot up-and-coming prospect, and he could crack the top 15 pretty soon. Gamrot has had 2 fights in the UFC so far, one against Guram. That was a close fight. He lost by split decision. And then his second fight against Scott Holtzman, he won by second round ground and pound. So he's 1-1 so far in the UFC. On the other hand, Jeremy Stephens, he's fought pretty much, actually, he fought all his fights at featherweight, and this is his very first fight at lightweight. Of his 32 UFC fights, he's got 15 wins and 17 losses. So not a good record. His last win was over 3 years ago. And of his losses, 2 losses by KO, 2 losses by submission, and 12 losses by decision. So that's pretty good. If you're going to lose by decision. You know what you're going to get by Stephens. He's not going to get finished. And then when he does win, he wins by KO. I really like this spot from a betting perspective, because Gamrot is one of the best grapplers in the UFC. And I think they're gonna trade if this fight does go standing. I think Gamrot's gonna match him on the feet. Stephens is getting old and he's got power, but I think Gamrot's gonna do whatever he wants in the cage. I think he's just gonna throw some jabs, throw some nice combos with some low kicks, and then take him down. I mean, you can see here he averages 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. So that's insane. He's one of the best wrestlers in the UFC. So I'm going to take Gamrot by decision. And to the co-main of the evening, we got Marion Reneau versus Meisha Tate. Reneau is 9-7-1, while Meisha Tate's 18-7. Meisha Tate has took a lot of time off. Her last fight was in 2016, so over 5 years ago. She hasn't won since 2016 as well. She's coming off a 2-fight losing streak, and she's going to be looking to win this fight because Marion Reneau is 44 years old, Meisha Tate's 34, and this is going to be Marion's last fight. So this is a retirement fight for Marion. As you can see, Marion Reneau is probably going to have she's going to have faster hands and going to have a little bit of an edge on the feet, but when it comes to grappling, I think Meisha Tate's a better wrestler, and I could see Meisha Tate winning by decision here. Alright, the main event, we got Khabib's buck buddy Islam Makhachev versus Thiago Moisés. Islam Makhachev is getting hyped up by the UFC because he's Khabib's best friend, and Islam is a very good grappler. He always has been, and he sat out for a while when Khabib was fighting, but since Khabib retired, Islam has been very active. Thiago Moisés is a very good grappler himself, except he's a different style grappler. He's more of a jiu-jitsu guy. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, actually. And Islam is more of a wrestler and ground and pound type fighter. Just looking at the line, Islam's a minus 700 favorite. Wow, that's massive. And then Thiago Moisés is a plus 450 dog. Just being an average bettor, you'd probably be like, oh, wow, I'll just throw a little bit of cash on Thiago and he could have a chance at winning. But I honestly don't see how Thiago could win this fight. Islam Makhachev does not get touched on the feet, and Thiago Moisés is not a striker. And the thing with Islam is he's going to take down his opponents whenever he wants. He's a very good takedown artist, and Thiago Moisés does not have good takedown defense, while Islam has very good takedown defense. So wherever this fight goes, I think Islam wins. So I'm going to go with Islam Makhachev by decision. Alright, to the most important part of the video, we got all my bets. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 bets total. My two biggest ones are this four-way parlay here, or these two four-way parlays. My biggest and most confident one would be parlaying Amanda Lemos, Islam Makhachev, Mateusz Gamrot, and Daniel Rodriguez. I did 2 units on this at plus 137 odds. I'm pretty confident in all 4 of these fighters. And the only way to bet Amanda and Islam is by parlaying them, because both of them can win by decision, knockout, or submission. My other parlay, I only did 1 unit, and I got plus 125 odds. I did Francisco Figueiredo, Rodrigo Nascimento, Islam, and Amanda again. I like parlaying the first 2 fights of the night, especially if I'm confident in both of them. And that way, if this loses, I can readjust and make another bet. With that first fight of the night, I hedged a little bit, and I went with Alan Badeau by KO with 0.4 units. So if Rodrigo Nascimento ends up losing, it's going to be by KO, and at plus 500 odds, this will save this parlay, so you'll end up making money anyways. My other hedge would be Malcolm Gordon by submission. I think that if Francisco Figueiredo loses, it's going to be by submission. So at 0.4 units at plus 750 odds, that will save this parlay as well. I'm also going to bet Sergey Morozov straight up at plus 120 for a unit. I'm going to bet Billy Quarantillo straight up at plus 140 for a unit. I'm going to bet Meisha Tate minus 145. And I'm going to do Gamrot by decision at plus 125 for 0.6 units. Thanks, guys, and let's have a great week.